Morning to you all, and a warm welcome to everyone joining this webinar on the public sector contract small and medium enterprises. My name is Guy, and I'll be your anchor for today. I'll guide you through the session, and I'm connecting the dots between our topics and our SMEs, our subject matter experts, Sam and Stefan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sam, and I am based out of London, part of the Shipley Global Management team. Stefan.
Hi, this is Stefan Morkov, based in Belgium from Hermix. We help companies win public contracts with data intelligence and AI. It's lovely to be here. We already have a couple of tens of participants that joined us today. I think it might make sense to wait for a couple of minutes to have everybody joining. We had an amazing response. We shared both Shipley as the main organizer of this event and us when we shared the event on LinkedIn. And we had an amazing response, lots of questions already and interest to this topic. So it's lovely to be here. I hope your weather is better than my Belgium weather, by the way. I personally like to be interrupted, and based on the discussions that we had, we know each other for quite a while now. I've been working with Guy, as you were saying, since, I don't know, tens of years. From the discussions that we have, both this week and during our previous projects, this is a great topic that we are talking about. So we trust that it will be interesting for the attendees and that they will also make it as interactive as possible. But you can also raise hands, obviously. This is a typical Zoom webinar environment.
Presenting the topics of today. So first, with Sam, we will look at what makes the public sector market attractive for SMEs, actually, because there is Europe exists actually of 90% SMEs, and so that's a huge force. Then we'll bust a little bit the common myths about bidding and participating in tenders for the EU public sector and for the EU institutions. And after that, we will show you how to find opportunities, and including the latest AI-driven platforms like Hermix. And finally, we'll dive into building winning strategies and expanding your business capabilities in this space if you're serious about bidding to the public sector. And as Stefan already said, you can post questions in the chat or in the Q&A, etc. Please make this an interactive session. Do interrupt us so that it's not a, how would I say, a one-way event, but a many-ways event. I'll be looking at the chat and Q&A boxes and interrupt Sam and Stefan from time to time to ask their opinion or to answer these questions. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you. Well, public sector bidding could feel like you're in a maze. How on earth do you find your way out? It may feel like a maze. And also a very special welcome to some of our friends. Alex King, great to have you here. Rory, Nick, great to have you here. Tony Round, great to have you here. And many others who are my friends. I can't look at your names all in sequence, but it's really nice to have friends here. Welcome to this webinar. So how do we find our maze? And when we close, we will help you to see how you find a bridge over the maze and find a fast track to get started. So the big question comes, why pursue public sector contracts? Especially if you're an SME or you're working with clients who are SMEs, or maybe you're in a large organization. In the public sector, there's over 2 trillion spent per year. Now imagine, there are no trillionaires in the world yet. Many are still wanting to become trillionaires, but that's a huge amount of money spent. Now, what's the critical thing when we look at public sector? Compliance is king. And sometimes we've seen that in submitting RFPs, people also make mistakes. For example, an incumbent in a government contract lost it when the client actually wanted them to stay there. Why? Because there was a section in the RFP which says transition plan. So what do you do if you're the incumbent? You can't transition from yourself to yourself. So they wrote not applicable. Guess what? That was the deal loser. Why was it the deal loser? Because they got 0 scoring. So early on, one of the things to think about is public sector bidding, compliance, and understanding evaluation criteria and scoring is king. And then it is profitable business. The governments want you to have profitable business. I was speaking to a former consultant, internal consultant in the UK Ministry of Defense, and he said a lot of times bids used to come in where people were buying the business. And if that happened, where your bid price is 20, 30, 40% cheaper than the others, what they then would do is put a committee to say, if we award this contract, 1, are they buying the business? 2nd, will they go bust if they don't make enough money? So it is important for the government to have profitable business. Of course, we also need to think about pricing to win, but it should be profitable. There's so much innovation in digital. Everyone talks about AI, everyone talks about digital. Even if you are in the supply chain business and supplying things which may seem like commodity products, the supply chain is digital. So we need to adopt the whole area of digital. The final thing to think about is that the barrier to entry, there used to be a view that the barrier to entry is very high for small and medium-sized organizations. But through tech, building a content library has become a lot easier through all sorts of AI platforms. Also, you see, looking for opportunities has also become a lot easier, and we'll give you some tips on that. And then what we see is the myth and reality. Please do put your questions in chat. We have some questions already emailed to us, which we will also cover. So what are some of the myths and realities? The first myth is only large organizations can bid. Why? Because you need to have a content library, you need to have specialists, you need to have people who understand their way through the maze, you need to have people who understand public sector bidding. Your business development team need to be able to have the right conversations with key stakeholders in the public sector before the RFP comes out. So there is this myth that only large organizations can bid. Another myth is there is a high cost of bidding. Somewhere between 1 to 5% of the total contract value could be used up for bidding. And the lower the deal value is, the higher potentially the cost of bidding. So how could we look at introducing some smart ideas there? And then, of course, the other thing we see is don't have the know-how. We're lost in that maze. How do we understand compliance? How do we understand the evaluation criteria? How do we put a commercial bid together? Can we make an error that the technical bid has got the price in it and we get disqualified? The reality is more and more governments want small and medium-sized companies to bid. It is the backbone of European economy, small and medium-sized. The Dutch government has taken a lead on this, and so has the German government, where a lot more SMEs are bidding. And in the UK, many large RFPs are requiring flow down of work to small and medium-sized businesses. So if you're a small and medium-sized business, find a prime contractor in your industry, go and talk to their chief and say, could you partner? Could there be some flow down of work to you? And then how could you internally adopt the concept of smart bidding, which is really using technology and maybe using some partners to build that know-how till you can become self-sufficient. So you could insource or partner. So you could look at partners potentially who could come in. There are people who are one people bands. There are loads of people with experience who could help you. Or you could find a partner who looks at risk reward share to be able to help you with bidding. So it's about how do you get started? And that's the myth and reality. So how do you look for opportunities in the public sector? You got to get started. Now, Shipley we've got a BD lifecycle guide which aligns the public procurement and commercial procurement with the way you sell. and we will offer all of you a free copy if you so wish, and we'll give you some details at the end of this presentation. So one way to find opportunities is you could put a resource to look at all the government tender portals, and you could spend a lot of time doing that. You could then look at the EU portals, or you could look at journals and look for where there are opportunities, or you could look at digital notices. And there are whole industries that really look at advertising all of that. Or perhaps you could look at something like an AI-driven platform, and that AI-driven platform actually helps you where it pulls all that information. And one of the critical questions you may want to look at is, what kind of opportunities are there? Who has bid for it in the last 3 years? Who has won? What's the pattern of buying? So that you and your leadership team can make some decisions to say, do we want to really play in this arena? What information can we have? I'll pass it over to my colleague, Stefan, to talk about the AI-driven platform. Guy.
Before doing that, actually, sorry, Stefan, to interrupt, but I really would like to ask the audience actually to send us some questions. I see there is one question coming in. Before we go further, shall I take this question, please? It's a question from Herbert, and he's saying, I'm a happy scribe notes taker, and I've been invited by Herbert Svein.
It's not a question.
I'm sorry. That's the note taker.
That's a good example of what technology does for us today. Thank you for the introduction. I think it's to what we are doing, and yes, we are here to talk about technology. And obviously, if we talk about technology, we need to talk about artificial intelligence. This is actually a line that I thought about during a training on public procurement with the European Institute of Public Administration months ago in Maastricht. And my thesis was that AI is magic. It does incredible things. And at the same time, AI is not magic. And I will go into a few details about this. But before that, the idea being obviously that AI is a highly advanced technology. And as Arthur C. Clarke was saying, the guy that wrote the Odysseus, the Spatial Odyssey 2001, he said that sufficiently advanced technology is not distinguishable from magic. It's similar to what Strugatsky was kind of saying in his great book. We are Hermix, as I was saying, and thank you, Sam, for the introduction to the things that technology does today in public contracting, public procurement. We help companies win public sector contracts with data, a lot of data analytics, and obviously also with AI. We work with a significant number of companies throughout Europe, mostly in Belgium, UK, Germany, and so on. And we are happy to have a lot of our friends and partners in the audience today. So data impacts the entire society, and we have the opportunity to transform also public procurement and sales with this incredible computing power and storage capacity. We analyzed 14 million historical contracts in order to get insights on public contracts all over Europe. We are analyzing every day somewhere like between 2,000 and 3,000 procurements, including millions of documents that we process with GPT. And we need to do this because we are in a sector that is still inefficient and formal and heavy and bureaucratic, but it is huge. I mean, small companies need to participate to this market because it is half of the economy. It's half, both in Europe and everywhere. Like a short overview, as Guy and Sam were saying earlier, we talk about more than half of the economy, and at the same time, according to the European Commission, to DG Growth, only 400,000 companies are active on this market, which is less than 2%. It's actually 1.3% of the number of 33 million companies in Europe. The data is a little bit contradictory from different studies, but all of this data shows that the participation of small and especially micro enterprises to the public sector is quite low. I mean, probably all large companies participate to public contracts at lower regional, national, or international level. These kind of tenders that we are also covering with thousands of tenders every day that we process automatically. I would say that from medium enterprises, companies between 50 and 250 employees, most of them, the majority of them are also present. And several studies that we analyzed, including our data from Hermix, shows pretty much the same conclusions, that between 40 to 70% of large enterprises, of the value of the public contracts go to large enterprises, and between 30 to 50 to small and medium. But if you look at small and micro enterprises, the numbers become minuscule. I mean, you have micro enterprises are 30 million, but they get only 4% of the value of this huge market. So, and also an analysis from our data in Hermix, we discovered that the top 1.5% of beneficiaries of research grants from the European Commission get more than half of the total budget. So the market is a little bit skewed. Sam was talking about the formal rules, and the formal rules for procurement are actually quite much easier now. They allow, and theoretically, the European Commission has policies in place and rules to facilitate the participation of SMEs. It's the same for innovation procurement. But what happens in practice? In practice, we also analyzed 5 years of historical data, and the value of individual lots did not decrease. Over the last 5 years, we analyzed UK, Germany, European institutions. So they say they have to decrease the value of individual lots. No, this did not happen. But this is not the big barrier. Small, medium companies can participate. They can create consortia, for instance. So administrative barriers can be is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem that we noticed is the effort to find the right tender, and then to qualify the right tender, to understand that this is the right thing for you, for me to do, to participate, and to write the proposal. Writing a proposal is huge. And Shipley is an expert in writing proposals, in consulting companies, how to write, how to win contracts in worldwide, everywhere in the public sector, not only in Europe, but everywhere in the world. So you know very, very well what I'm saying. Writing a proposal, I did this for 20 years. Writing a proposal can take months. So you need to find the right one. How do you find the right one? There are two things that are important. One is three. One is to have alerts and to monitor the market, so to receive the right information. The second is to qualify. So if a tender is matching my profile, or I have the right information, then it's important to read it and understand it. To read a tender, you need between 30 minutes to 2 days. To analyze the commercial context of a tender, you might need somewhere like 2 hours or 2 weeks just to look at the context. And I will just show you this this is not a demo. We will organize, by the way, a demo on the 28th, exactly in two weeks, in which we will go through everything that Hermix is doing. So this is not a demo, but we will put the link in the chat. We will do a demo as well, of a full one. What I wanted to show is just examples of how Hermix as a platform or a tool like Hermix can help find the right tenders and qualify them. This is what we were discussing 2 days ago, and that at the suggestion of Guy, for instance, this is how you would make in smart filters to look at social security tenders in Belgium and Netherlands. So just look at the company profile, my company profile, look at the market. These are tenders for social security in Belgium. There are already tens of tenders published already this year. And we were looking yesterday at this one, for instance. It's social services for the Walloon public service, the Service Sociaux pour le Service Public de Wallonie. Look, so you already have here the basic information. This is Hermix, this is live. You have here the basic information about the tender. The description, we already have the documents downloaded, analyzed with our AI tools, with GPT. You can collaborate and stuff like this. What we provide, and this was taking me days of work, is a summary of who is the player on this market. Who are the previous suppliers? What kind of budgets we are talking about in the previous projects? What are the relevant previous projects, as you see here, from the past 10 years of historical contracts? So see 2021, another similar contract, 2024. And you can even go to a very detailed analysis of the past historical contracts, all the previous suppliers. You can see the buyer profile. So just open and you see 2000 previous contracts. We also create automatically descriptions of the company and so on. So this is everything that we know about this buyer, like the market, the suppliers, historical trends, graphs of partnerships, and so on. And more than that, we also have with one click the summary of the technical requirements. Let me zoom in. So we just got the documents, we analyzed them with the GPT tool, with an AI tool. This is the objectives, the budgets, the award criteria. You also have a chat that you can use on the spot, asking in French or in English with automatic translation, obviously, because this is AI. So the document, this tender is in French, but we got it in English translated, and the answers here are also in French, or you can make them in English. About the services. The same about, for instance, transport services. We are working with some great companies in the transportation, including in Belgium. And for instance, this is a tender for transportation of school children, I think, in Belgium. The same. Historical context, commercial context, tender analysis, requirements, volumes, evaluation criteria, and so on. This saves you at least 30 minutes for one tender. And the same for the market. And with this one, I'm just finished. This is, for instance, the analysis of the, what is this? The social security market in Belgium, with the biggest spenders, number and value of the contracts for each spender, geographic distribution, by type of authority, and so on. And it's the same type of analysis you can do for suppliers. For instance, these are the biggest suppliers of social security services in Belgium. You can have it as data, charts, Excels, graphs, and so on. These are examples of what we can do with technology and data based on a lot of technology behind. And Guy.
Yeah, it's tremendous. I mean, head off for you and your team of Hermix, actually, Stefan, because what you have done with this open data that is available from various EU sources, it's just magnificent. I mean, putting it all together in one place is well, a bit manager's dream, actually, and also for the salespeople involved. It gives them the right, how would I say, information to go after new contracts. And we have a couple of questions here. There is a question from Dan, I believe, and most of the public tenders include experts and technology. How can AI help you find people or companies that have those, that market those expertise and technology? There's a question for you, I guess, Stefan. Is your platform suggesting in anyhow or in any way where to get that expertise or which companies to connect?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea how we work is we look at historical data. So two things. So one is the commercial and one is the technical part. So from a commercial point of view, we look at 10 years all over Europe of companies, similar companies that won similar tenders. This is one of the type of analysis that we do. So when you look at tender for a particular customer, you can look in Hermix at who won previous similar contracts with the same customer, or previous similar contracts with customers in the same market. And this tells you who is your competition or partnership. So this is one. Also we look at technical requirements for a particular tender for a lot of data sources, including the Belgian procurement portal and European institutions and so on. So we have analyzed with GPT tools the requirements, so you can extract answers to questions like what experts are being requested, what CVs, how many CVs. These are examples of the tools that we put to solve, answer very relevant questions like the one which was asked here.
I think when you showed just 5 minutes ago the companies that were involved that make part of the ecosystem for the past 10 years, etc. This is a good start for the people already to explore that for the opportunities that they would be interested in. And of course, also Shipley can help you with additional information on this point. Sam, you want to comment on that same question?
Yes, I mean with technologies, there's so much available, but you can use a lot of the standard available tools, such as ChatGPT. You could also use the Copilot, Gemini, all paid versions to be able to do a lot of research on who is competing, what the opportunities are, who the stakeholders are. The only caution I would give on the tools is just don't release your own data into the web, right? So don't feed your data. But for research, there are lots of platforms that you can use. Try the different platforms and see what kind of things you get, and you'll be surprised at the rich quality of information that you can get from some of these platforms. The
And
other
finally,
thing,
go on, Sam.
one last thing on technology is critical to pursuing large organizations is building an internal content library. Content library is one of those things where everyone wants to have it, and we just never got around to it. After we finish a project, it's all there, it's archived. So develop an internal strategy to say, even if it's indexing it correctly, how do we have past proposals? How do we have information? And you could both do it the old fashioned way, putting it all on SharePoint, or there are many platforms available to build your internal library. There are also platforms available that can help you extract information intelligently. Just a word of caution, increasingly we're seeing in the public sector that the request for proposals or tenders are stating do not prepare the response using AI. So you may have the content library done, but actually preparing the answers. So you couldn't just feed an RFP and then say create the best proposal for that. Back to you, Guy.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So let me have a look if there's any other questions there. There is Girish asking, SMEs usually look for guidance on large tenders, like the ones that they may not have attended bidding before. How AI can help them tech mentored to bid for large tenders? Actually, how can AI help preparing companies, especially SMEs, for large tenders?
I think this is part of the answer should be bigger, and we should not look only at AI for this. So participating to large tenders is part of a bigger process, and technology is one of the things that you can have, that you should have. Data and intelligence is one of the things that you need, but it's only one part of the overall picture. And I would suggest maybe to continue with our last part, because I think the biggest part of the answer is there, namely. You need also the expertise, the team, and partners. I did see also, I think this is a good entry to the next part of our discussion. There was a question that was saying if there are visible or not obvious barriers for small players in Eastern countries to get public contracts in Western Europe. This is also a great point of discussion regarding the participation of small companies, but it also introduces the geographic perspective. And I think the question is incredibly relevant. So first of all, I think the answer is in 3 bullet points to this question is, from a formal point of view, there are no barriers or very few barriers. So in the European Union, there are no barriers to participation to tenders, to public procurements from one country to the other, none whatsoever. Formally, every company in Europe can work in any other country or region in Europe. There are very rarely barriers related to language. especially in tenders where language is important, like education or communication, you will be required to prove that you have language expertise at incredibly high levels sometimes, but this is related to experts, not to the company. From a not so obvious perspective, yes, there are more barriers because there is a level of subjectivity in the evaluation of every evaluator or authority, and they will look at things like how far is this supplier? If the service relates to the delivery of pencils for schools or phones, we have clients ourselves that are using Hermix to do bids for phones, papers, medical equipment for hospitals all over Europe, and IT services and security services. Well, if it's a security service, you need to have security agents there. If you need to deliver paper for a school or notebooks, you need to be able to deliver in that region. So physical presence sometimes is also important. And, authorities look at, do I have somebody to talk to if I need in 1 or 2 hours? These are kind of informal things that authorities are looking at. But these are informal. And my personal recommendation from my experience working across Europe everywhere is to rely on partners.
Yeah.
It's the easiest way to grow.
And Stefan, it proves that it is an open market, of course, and yes, people still are buying from people. That is very much true. You need to have the relationship. You cannot rely everything on a tool, even though if it's a magnificent tool. But you need to have people that can understand and that will invest time to understand this market and to go out and build relationships and to build not only with clients, but with teams so that you can form part of a consortium and claim your share of the business. Let's see if there is any.
I think those are all the questions covered, Guy. Now, what would you like to do next?
For the moment, yes. So back over to you, Sam. After the finding and after the qualifying, well, it's time to develop our win strategy.
Brilliant. Thank you. So develop your win strategy. Now, when you look at win strategy, you can't leave it to chance. Any sport that you think about or any analogy you look at, winners have to do the hard work. There's no shortcut, is there? There's no AI that says you can make you run faster, but there are techniques, there are tools. So how do you develop your win strategy? We have already talked about compliance is king in public sector bidding. Also, Stefan very nicely put it that there is a whole list of requirements, so the requirements you would get in an RFP. But are the requirements and compliance enough to actually win an opportunity? One thing that is still not changed, regardless of all the technology, is people still buy from people. If not, all the car dealers would have long gone and you order your cars online and it gets delivered to your front door. In fact, most of those companies went bust because people still want to go and buy from people. So how do we develop our win strategy? What we're going to think about early on is, do we want to become a front runner where we shape the opportunity, or do we want to become a challenger? Now, what you see here is a life cycle of how a contract is awarded. Right at the beginning, there are some issues, operational issues. They think, what should be the outlined budget? What's the solution? Then they seek proposals. Now, notice a lot of energy is put in at the bottom in that bar. 20% of the effort is gone defining the issue. 60% of the effort has gone in trying to work out an outlined solution. And the proposal request hasn't even gone out. The RFP hasn't gone out. And that's the time you'd have an emotional decision. This is a way perhaps you could think about it in your own lives. If you were deciding to buy a car, you decide which car you want to buy, or you think about why you need the car. Is there some legislation like the ultra low emission zone? And then you go and test drive all the cars. And then maybe you've decided you're going to get a Volkswagen, or you've decided you're going to get a BMW or a Mercedes or a Nissan, and you've made an emotional decision. Then somebody says, hold on, before you make that decision, why don't you go and check the whole the whole market out. Go and check 4 or 5 cars. And off we go to test drive every single car that we have time to do. But as we are test driving that car, are we really unbiased to say we're going to check each thing for its worth? Or do we say, the car I really want to buy, well, this one doesn't give what I want to buy. So we all form a bias. In other words, an emotional decision. And then the proposal process means that there is a logical justification as to why that emotional decision was made. So if you are the front runner and you've helped shape the opportunity, the client or the customer or the organization has emotionally bought into your solution, then your proposal needs to help them to say, this is why we chose company A or company C or company Z. If you're not the front runner and you're the challenger, what could you do to really embarrass the front runner? What could you do that is bold, that's brave, so that the evaluators say, the people who are the front runners, why did they not put this in the proposal? So you could take 2 strategies. Of course, to win consistently, we want to be the front runner, but challenges can also change the game. So how do you develop your win strategy? You have a solution that you think Department A or Department B or EU organization this would really benefit, and you've really figured out how your solution can solve that. Would that win you the deal? No, there are 2 things you need to consider. What do you need to do before the proposal, which is at that emotional buy stage, and what do you actually put in the proposal? So the first thing you need to think about is, what do we need to do for the key stakeholders to select us? So this concept, Shipley uses a term called the hot buttons. Hot buttons is a way of thinking, why is this person hired? Could they get fired? Or could they get measured? Or is there some reason why they want to sort out this particular requirement? Or they have an objective. They've recently been appointed in a senior post and they're going to be there 3 years. They want to make an impact. So we need to understand that top level individual stakeholders' objective. And then we need to think about, how do we engage with them? People buy from people. So how do we get to that people? What is the pathway? Can we get introductions? Can we go to events that really get us to connect with them? Do we do it the old-fashioned way and write a letter or an email and asking for a meeting? Introductions always have a higher impact in getting a meeting than cold writing or cold requests. And then when we look at the proposal, we've got to think about the audience. You've got the compliant proposal readers who are going to evaluate and who are going to score, but then you've got the speed readers. Just imagine if you're at an airport and your flight's delayed and you go and look at the bookstore where there is 1 or 2 still left, and you pick up a magazine, you don't just look at the front cover, you browse through it till you find a story that's of interest and say, it's worth buying this magazine. And then we see, how will we say it so that it helps them to select us? So proposals are not written to be read. Proposals are written to be evaluated. And my friend and colleague Guy has got so many stories about wins and losses about this that you could have a whole evening with him telling you how he got those beautiful gray hairs. Right? So we've got to think about these aspects of what do we need to do pre-proposal and what do we need to do at proposal stage. So focus on each of the stakeholder groups and then stakeholders themselves. Policymakers, what is the ROI? How will this help us achieve our objectives? Think of the tenure of that policymaker. Maybe there is a new minister of commerce. Maybe there's a new head of policy on HR. Maybe there's a new equal opportunities. And they want to drive some objectives, take the stickiness out. And so they would have a time. However, before it comes into a proposal and you win it, they also need to think about -1 or -2, what I call the C-level -1, -2. They'll be looking at operational capability. right? And so operational capability is really about how will this solution enable us to do something better. Even if you're buying paper, instead of stocking it, we get just-in-time delivery because there are some sensors that can read the stock of the paper in the printer and it can actually deliver on time. There's always a technology element, and the solution itself has got to comply to certain standards. And in certain industries, it could be security compliance, it could be the different taxonomy compliance, it could be different standards of compliance or different safety compliance. So not only have you got the requirement, we've got to also think about the compliance. And finally, the community that's going to benefit from the solution, how much would they adopt it? Give you an example. Many years ago in the Middle East, when I was in Abu Dhabi, for a hospital, we implemented a solution that was dumb terminals, right? Citrix. And they loved it. Why? Because nobody was using personal data. We did the same for a government department. And it was an absolute failure. Why? Because all the ports were locked. They couldn't put their USB. They couldn't use it as a PC. And within 6 months, we had to replace every single Citrix terminals with a PC. So just because we have a solution that the policymakers may think, we've got to understand adoption for the beneficiaries of the solution. Believe me, we lost money on that contract because the solution was wrong. Of course, through a change order, we got it back, but it can do a lot of reputational damage if we can't link the adoption of the solution there. Also, we need to think about different risks. Foremost in the mind of selectors is the risk. We've not worked with you before. What's the risk? Are you going to go bust? Can you deploy it? What are the compliance? What are the operational risks? And what we've learned from evaluating many bids is often with risk, companies can write a section which says, we have an ABCD methodology of risk management, but it's not tailored to this. So we need to think about that. Also then, now let's talk about how do you want to build your business expansion capabilities? Okay, what we've given you is just a very short glimpse in this 45-minute webinar. So how do you get started when you go from here and you want to have internal discussions in your organization? We suggest start with a feasibility study. Reach out to Stefan, say, could you have a trial use of that to extract some management data that you can have an internal feasibility? Or what you may want to do is call Gear I and say, guys, we're doing an internal feasibility study. Could you set up a webinar internally for our team? We're happy to sign an NDA and give you some pointers that you can become self-sufficient to have an internal dialogue. And then consider, could you conduct a pilot project? Could you get a few people together and say, you know what, in the next year or two, these are the things we're going to be pursuing in these regions, in these markets. So conduct a pilot project. Also, in order to leapfrog that, in order to find your way out of that maze that I showed, is look at an in-source or a partner, and they could help come and work, structure it in such a way that you really can make sure that there is some risk-reward share as well. And then finally, look at becoming self-sufficient. So although you in-source or have a partner, and there are different options you have, consider that as an interim solution till you become self-sufficient. We did this for a client where we set up 3 win centers for them in Romania, in Hyderabad, and in Costa Rica. We ran it for a period of time, and then we transferred it to them, and it became self-sufficient. And for every euro they invested in a partner, they got 2,000 euros back. So instead of being lost in the maze, you could find a fast track and you could find a bridge. And that bridge can actually help you to not be lost in the maze, but actually find your way out. So one way you could do that, you could claim your free digital copy. This is the Shipley Business Development Lifecycle Guide. So if you'd like a copy, please send an email to this email address, Please take a picture of this slide, and it's not unlimited. Just do that in the next 24 hours or by the end of Monday. This will help you with building your internal feasibility study. It will tell you about the different phases by which customers buy. It will tell you how you actually plan and align your internal processes. It'll give you a checklist of the different roles you need internally, and it'll tell you how you build that capability. And of course, we're happy to help you in any way if you want to make some internal conversations. Over to you, Guy.
Well, thank you very much, both Stefan and Sam, for this nice, actually, presentation and a practical guidance on how SMEs actually can participate in the vast public sector in Europe. So don't forget that almost 15% of Europe's gross domestic product is actually done is business in the public sector. So it's a huge sector to be in. And there are some trends out there that make that, we are going to beef up our defense. We still need to look after our people. Health is important, transport, logistics, etc. That is part of another seminar that we will be conducting in the course of a couple of months, etc. So stick with us, and we'll help you guide. We'll give you the fast track. I like that image that you put there, Sam. The bridge, the fast track in the maze. That is exactly describing what it is that we're trying to do together with Hermix.
I would like to take to get one step back, because there were some questions related to practical aspects of, if you could stop sharing, it would help. There were some practical aspects of how can technology and how can we actually help smaller companies to participate in public contracts. And for instance, there was a question like, how much time do you save when you use tool technology? And also another one related to how can technology guide people into winning contracts. And as I was saying earlier, it's not only about technology, it's a combination of people and technology. I reshared my screen. I hope it is visible. It's a combination of people and technology. It's not only about technology. Technology enhances what people are doing. Because, for instance, there are these 4 big areas where Hermix and tools are helping in public procurement. You have in the discovery, finding tenders. You have in the qualification, understanding what a tender is about. In strategy, understanding the market and the context, what we call the context, meaning which are the players, who are the buyers, the market size. The first question you're asking when going to a new market, how big is this market? Is it worth investing in it? And obviously orchestrating, writing the proposal, which is the biggest cost. So talking about how much do you save? I would estimate that Hermix replaces a team of between 2 and 3 persons in a bid pre-sales team. Because, big companies, bid pre-sales team, big companies have teams of tens of people writing proposals. They have 2-3 people that only monitor tenders. In the previous teams with whom I was working, we had 2-3 people monitoring and analyzing tenders continuously. So this is what we aim to replace, first of all, this tedious work of reading, analyzing, extracting requirements. But then there are also additional things. Oh, you know what? Let me show you in just 1 second what I mean. So look, these are the list of tenders that I'm looking at myself, flagged by me. And for instance, this is the European Parliament tender. It's huge. This is very huge. So see, with only 1 click, I have information about formal requirements for participation, like the minimum turnover. Okay, this is big. When I see 20 million required to participate, then I need to find partners. This is big. Not so many companies have 20 million turnover per lot. But so then I know I need to find a partner. And I got this information on the spot. But look, ENISA here, this is an agency, an European agency in Greece. This is a smaller data center services. This is a very low barrier, right? So as I was telling you, most of these standards do not have very high barriers. You need a turnover of 200,000 euros. It's not so much, right? So you get all this list of formal requirements, and you know on the spot, do I want to work on this or not? So this is qualification. And then the next step is, for instance, finding the right partners, when you need to look at the overall market. Like, why don't I show you? So I would go for this. This is my typical market that I've been working on forever. That's why I'm looking at it. These are the players on my market. This is the guys I want to call if I want to be active, because they are either my competition or my partners, obviously. I can see this kind of data. I can click on each of these companies. Let's select one of our customers, maybe. Huh? So I click on the profile of a company, and I see everything they do everywhere in Europe. These guys have 3,000 contracts. They are huge. Okay. So, and including contact points. So this is what I can call people and I can say, is this something interesting? Where are you active? In what countries? And so on. This is another step where we help. And I will stop here because of the time. But yes, you can use tools also, as Sam was saying earlier, also to even write. And we have also tools for checking the compliance of proposals against both formal and informal requirements. But I also would like to underline, and I agree with Sam's statement about preparing in advance for a project. So I think the big question when writing a proposal is, why do I win? This is what I was asking in every bid and pre-sale meeting. Why do I win? And the answer is not because I have 200,000 turnover. Everybody has 200,000 turnover, even 20 million. Everybody has 20 million turnover. Why do I win? And I don't think a machine can answer to this. It can give you hints and information, but it has to be high human intelligence and empathy and reading between the lines to answer to these questions.
Right, Stefan. Thank you very much. I would say a very useful insights. And just to recap, SMEs are the majority of the business in Europe. Public sector is one of the biggest sectors in Europe as well. It's very good to go after it. You need to prepare yourself, and luckily there are tools that can help you doing so. But you need to build also the ecosystem and the relationships, and that's important. And don't forget that we can be a source of help there. And please do claim your free copy of the business lifecycle guide that Sam was talking about, and make use of the seminars that both Hermix and I and us, Shipley, will be conducting in the near future. With this, I think I'll wish you a nice day. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to come back to us.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Happy selling.